Good evening, everyone. What's going on? This is Chris of Around the ATL. Welcome to the show. This is our Falcons draft show, the first one over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for those who are going to tune in either today, tomorrow, or next week. Make sure you follow. First of all, make sure you subscribe to the IMTM Worldwide Radio YouTube page. It's going to scroll all across the night. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram on IMTM Worldwide Radio. You can also follow us on Twitter, IMTM Radio, and Jordan23 ATL. Make sure you do that. It really will be appreciated. Tonight, as I mentioned, is our draft show. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the draft, just a little bit. And then next week we're going to do the entire draft for the Atlanta Falcons. But first of all, let's bring in our co-host for tonight. This is going to be a big night for him because, well, we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and bring in our man, Jordan Jackson. Jordan, what's going on, man?
What's up, sir? As always, glad to be on Around the ATL. Actually, glad to be back so quickly after just doing a show earlier this week. Something we haven't been able to do for you guys in quite a while. So that's a positive development. And, obviously the key focus of tonight is the NFL draft. Is where for a lot of people, most people's top two favorite sports, NFL and college football, intersect. And that's one of the main reasons why the draft is such a big deal. So with that being said, sir, let's talk about these Atlanta Falcons first round draft.
All right. So prior to this draft, the offseason, most people could probably agree, hasn't been the best for a number of reasons. And then, of course, the 2024 season, we only experienced a one-game improvement after what was supposed to be a really good offseason the year before, right? With what happened last year, a lot of franchises probably would have cleared house, right? Of course, Falcons organization did not do that. Needs. For a long time, needs doesn't seem like that's very important for the Atlanta Falcons franchise. For some reason, our team has kept doing the opposite of what the teams that win have done. The ones who have won multiple Super Bowls have done, right? Build the interior line, offense and defensive line, protect the quarterback, obviously, give him time to throw, have a consistent running game, have a good skill positions at everything else, right? The last 4 seasons, the Atlanta Falcons did not draft a defensive player in the first round. Some of y'all know that, right? And am I saying that the defense would have been top 5 if we had done that? No, but drafting A.J. Terrell in 2020, we then drafted Pitts in 2021, Drake London in 2022, Robinson in 2023, and Penix in 2024. 2024, the Falcons were second to last in passing touchdowns given up with 34. 2024, we lost 7 games by a touchdown or less. Sure, if we had a little bit more offense, but guess what? Sometimes you just got to get a stop, right, Jordan? Three of those losses, we scored 24 points, 38 points, and 27 points. So there is that, right? 2024, we were second to last in sacks. 2022, we were second to last in sacks. 2021, we were last in sacks. Okay? When you can never hit the quarterback, you don't win a lot. All right? So 2024, yes, I did want an edge rusher, a difference maker. Of course, we didn't go that route. We got a quarterback, which was, in this case, a good move. 2023, Jalen Carter was there. Jordan talked about Jalen Carter for like 7 years, it seemed like, right? We did have a running back at the time who had just had a 1,000-yard season. Carter had 10.5 sacks. Okay? We need 3 guys to total 3 sacks on our team sometimes, it seems like, right? 2022, we could have moved up and maybe gotten Thibodeau. I don't know. Jordan Davis was there, Still waiting on Ebiketie, right? 2021, Patrick Surtain was there. J.C. Horn would have been great with A.J. on the other side, right? Anybody agree with that, right? So
Michael
2000,
Parsons.
oh my goodness, there you go. So 2025, we had the 15th, 46, 118th, 218, 242. Can we get some game changing value? So for me, of course, with the 15th, my wants was an edge rusher. Um, Williams from UGA or Jalen Walker were available. So, Jordan, I'm going to let you take it away as I get ready to knock our sounder off. Let's see if I can do that real quick for you, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, for years, like you said, the Falcons' Achilles heel has been the pass rush. We hadn't been able to get to the quarterback from the edge and hadn't been able to really get to the quarterback from the interior. And then I tell you, I was very worried, very, very worried tonight, especially when the Falcons were on the clock because the clock kept ticking and ticking and ticking and eventually got down to about 25 seconds. I was worried that the unthinkable was going to happen, that we were going to not get the pick in the time, and Arizona was going to race in front of us and pick before us because that has happened before in NFL history. I believe the Minnesota Vikings were one of the teams involved in the scenario. I'm not sure if they were the beneficiary or the violator, but yet and still. In franchise history of the Atlanta Falcons had never taken a player from the University of Georgia in the first or the second round. In fact, the third round was the most recent. We had a high draft pick from Georgia, and that was Mr. Akeem Dent, inside linebacker, back in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. Well, ladies and gentlemen, things have changed tonight. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons did indeed select Jalen Walker, linebacker, defensive end from the University of Georgia. And when this pick was made, if you could hear anybody out there, the live draft party at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the roar in that stadium was as big as if the Falcons had just scored a touchdown to win a game. Um, Probably the most popular draft pick in the history of the Atlanta Falcons, probably ever. Okay, Michael Vick was absolutely a popular draft pick, but I still think that there was, some people who weren't quite on board with that. I don't think you're going to get very many people that aren't on board with Jalen Walker unless they might be a fan of an opposing SEC team, particularly Florida or Tennessee. One of the main rivals of Georgia. There were SEC East teams before the SEC did away with the divisions. Chris, just your thoughts real quick on the pick of Jalen Walker.
Well, I was watching Twitter, and one of the comments that I saw was, this pick is going to bring all Falcons fans together because, like you said, it's going to be hard to disagree with this one. For all the different reasons. One is an edge rusher. Two, it's a University of Georgia player. The two merge. And you got Voltron Force or whatever, right? So I think that's going to be a huge deal. I mean, all the Georgia fans who haven't been Falcons season ticket holders all this time will probably all of a sudden decide, you know what, let's go ahead and do this. I have an email in my email box from from the Falcons and Mercedes Benz, asking me if I want to spend $17,500 on a suite. I don't know. Let me see if I can dig it up from somewhere. I don't know. I've never had season tickets before, but not at Mercedes Benz anyway. Georgia Dome a long time ago. So I think it's a huge positive. And as I mentioned, that's why I did what I did earlier to say, at a certain point, for you to compete on a regular basis every 5 to 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you have to do what the other teams that have won 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Super Bowls have done. And one of those things is to create a pass rush. I just let everybody know we have been second to last or last in sacks for too many years for no reason. Like, how is that satisfactory? So I think it's a huge thing on all those fronts. I'm excited about it. Everybody is excited about it. It looks like. Don't know what we're going to do the rest of the draft so far, but this is a great start for the Atlanta Falcons.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest strengths of Jalen Walker is his positional versatility. He can put his hand in the dirt and play defensive end and rush from the down position, and particularly on third downs and all obvious passing downs. He can play stand up outside linebacker in a 3-4. He can also play stand up outside linebacker in a 4-3 and pursue from the weak side or the strong side. He can also play inside linebacker in a 3-4. So you can line Jalen Walker up just about anywhere. And it's quite similar to a guy who I just mentioned quickly a couple of minutes ago, Michael Parsons, a guy who lines up everywhere. Another guy who had positional versatility like that coming out of college was Von Miller as well, a guy who often played outside linebacker in a 4-3, but then put his hand in the dirt and rushed on obvious passing downs. And so that's one of the biggest strengths of Jalen Walker. Now, I'll give you another bonus strength. Some of his best games this past season came against the University of Texas. The University of Texas offensive tackle who was blocking him was actually selected higher than he was. He was the first round selection of our rival, the New Orleans Aints. So we actually just took the guy who dominated the Aints first round pick. So that I just thought that was also a very positive development of the night. Let me just give you a couple of strengths: explosive first step, a detailed pass rush plan. When's the last time we could say that about a guy coming out of college to be drafted? They already had a detailed plan, and they had moves and counter moves and know how to use their hand movement to get to the passer. Very fluid mover, great at change of direction, functional strength for his size. Obviously, he's not your big 270-pound defensive end, but we have needed speed off the edge for a very, very long, long time. We need to continue to bulk up the interior and to make this thing go. But it's a shame that it took. Oh my goodness! Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. The Atlanta Falcons have acquired pick 26 and pick 101 for the Rams for pick 46, pick 242, and a 2026 first round draft pick. So the Atlanta Falcons have just traded back in the first round while we're live on the air. Now, I'm not quite sure how I feel about giving up next year's first round draft pick, but I'm quite curious to see.
And the pick is in. They're about to call it out. I don't even know what to say.
What
Who would they be trying to get? Do you think?
That's a good question. It's possible they could be trying to double up an edge here. Maybe get a guy like Mike Green out of Marshall who had 17 sacks last year. It's possible they could be trying to target one of the better corners left in the draft here. Trying to take a look at his best available. Yes, Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, is still available, so he would be a guy.
Thomas out of FSU.
That's a good question. You also have the middle linebacker prospect Jahad Campbell out of the University of Alabama, who's a guy we've heard that the Falcons like. Got Maxwell Harrison, the cornerback out of Kentucky. James Pierce Jr., guy who's had 17 and a half sacks over his last 2 years for Tennessee, 7.5 last year, 10 the year before. So Nick Ummenwari, a safety out of South Carolina.
How about Trey Amos out of Ole Miss too?
That is true. It looks like the Falcons have indeed, according to what I'm seeing,
James Pierce
selected James Pierce Jr., the pass rusher out of Tennessee. I like that pick. Obviously, he's got to pan out to make it worth giving up next year's first round draft pick. But like I said, a productive player at the SEC level, 17 and a half sacks the last 2 years. I am a fan of that pick, sir.
I'm flabbergasted. What did I just say? Let me add him on here. Did I just spell his name right? I hope I did. There you go, James Pierce. Real time. I had to do this quick. Edge rush from Tennessee. This is very interesting. This is unexpected.
Very
Are
interesting,
the same
sir.
people running the Falcons that were running them last year? I don't know. This is kind of eerie here. So all of a sudden, after 4 straight years of drafting offensive players in the first round this year, the Atlanta Falcons basically go back to back picks in the first round, and edge rusher at that. So apparently, someone has gotten the message. I don't even know what to say. This is actually, I'm woke
Shocking,
up now. I was dead tired earlier, George. I'm like, this is amazing. And see,
shocking development.
what I was actually pulling up too is okay. So now, what can we expect from someone like Brandon Dorlus who didn't get a chance to play last year? Is he going to be able to put in his name and help the team at all? And then others,
Braylon Trice, who was injured
Rice as
last
well.
year, is also coming back.
Yeah.
Ruka Roro, who we saw flash, but then he got injured. There's another young guy to add to the mix. So all of a sudden, the Falcons are starting to have quite a few young prospects, with a couple of them being premium prospects as first round draft picks. Quick note on Mr. James Pierce Jr., and this is courtesy of Steve Munich of ESPN. And just to give an idea, and I know you can't always go by draft boards from network analysts, but they had him ranked as their 16th overall player, and we just got him at 26, so that's good value. It says James Pierce was the only edge to run a sub 4.5 40, and he had the quickest 10-yard split for edges at the combine. Those results reflect what he shows on tape. He's an explosive speed rusher with great get off and closing bursts. He can redirect and beat blockers to the inside when they take away the edge. Despite having shorter arms for an edge, Pierce can shoot the hands and transition from speed to power. He is a disruptive run defender who slips blocks and gets into the gaps. He also looks natural dropping into coverage.
So let me ask you this. Well, first of all, some of what you just mentioned in regards to Pierce sounds like it will also go into our run defense. Because that's another thing that we've been really bad on when it counts. It's not so much overall, but when it really counts. So with him being able to go from one end to one end in that 10 seconds, an error occurred. Wait a moment, try again. That makes me feel good about that aspect too, because we don't know where our linebacker core is right now, technically, right? That's still a little bit of a mystery. And I wanted to ask you, I saw something on one of the pages about a possibility, and this is going into the cornerback position, Ramsey, and using David Onyemata to maybe pull that off. Do you think that's even a possibility at all, or just, and it wouldn't just be that, it'll be some picks involved and things of that nature, or maybe some players, I don't know. But do you think that would even be a possibility? Do you think it'd be a worthwhile try to get someone like Ramsey next to AJ? What do you think?
Well, I don't know that Onyemata would be the guy that would interest Miami for Ramsey, but I do think that him coming to the Falcons is indeed a possibility. Shout out to Jeff Benedict, who was a former host of 92.9 The Game in the evenings, and something I was going to mention to you, Chris. I mentioned it here on the show. Is he is interested in coming on around the ATL to talk some draft with us in the near future. We got to see if we can work out the logistics. But he said that Jalen Walker was the number one player on the Atlanta Falcons draft board. He's also said that the Falcons do indeed have interest in trading for Jalen Ramsey. Now, I don't quite think that I want to put him on the other side of AJ Terrell. What I've heard, and it's quite interesting, is that Jalen Ramsey may be willing to and ready to make the transition to safety, to try to prolong his career even longer. Something we've seen from a guy like Rod Woodson, for example, who went from one of the great corners to a great safety with the Baltimore Ravens. But it just gives you another, Pro Bowl level player, another smart player, a player who has won a championship ring, to go with the back end of your secondary, somebody who will communicate, who will help the young guys in the secondary be in the right spots. And one thing people have to remember, he was on the Rams Super Bowl team. Raheem Morris was the defensive coordinator on that team. Jalen Ramsey has had glowing things to say about Raheem Morris. Every opportunity that he was asked about Raheem Morris, for whatever reason, and whether that be when Morris, first got the job in Atlanta or what have you. And I mean, like I said, he has spoken so highly of Morris. In fact, he's called Morris, one of the best coaches he's ever played for. So I do think that that's something that's a possibility now. Looking at the trade we just made, to be honest with you, I haven't even had a chance to inventory and see what we even have left in this draft. But it's possible that next year, not first round, next year's third or fourth round pick or something might get something like that done. And if it does, I'm all for it. I'm all for it, Chris.
For our cornerbacks, we have AJ, we got Natrone Brooks, we have D. Alford, we have Kevin King. We're kind of thin,
Mike Hughes,
unless
Mike Hughes was also re-signed
and
as
Mike
well.
Hughes, unless
Um,
unless someone steps up, and that's the reason I threw out the Ramsey opportunity. Would it be
Well, even
something?
if you play him at safety, though, it still doesn't mean that you can't slide him over and line him up against a slot dude. You know what I mean? So it still gives you coverage versatility either way. What's the other gentleman? Clark Phillips as well, who showed some flashes, is also still on the roster. So
Yeah.
it's be
So
interesting to see. Real quick though, just wanted to make another note on Pierce real quick, Chris. Um, as I see that Malachi Starks, another Georgia Bulldog, was just selected by the Baltimore Ravens. Um, Pierce was heavily connected to the Falcons in the pre-draft process, according to Mark Raymond of ESPN. He said, I even had them taking him at 15 overall in my final mock draft. And they moved back into the round to get the high upside pass rusher with the elite speed. Atlanta paid a hefty price to move up from 46 overall from Pierce, which speaks to his belief and his ability to impact the game. Pierce's ability to play in space is exactly what Coach Raheem Morris's scheme needs. And one other final note before I let you go back at it, Chris, is you mentioned him improving our defense. Jalen Walker is a good run defender as well. And oftentimes on the early running downs, Walker lines up in a linebacker position, where let's say, in the past, like Troy Anderson might line up. You know what I mean? And so it just gives you an extra guy who, even though he's not the biggest defensive end in the world, he's good size for a linebacker. So that versatility is going to help a lot. And one other thing, and I've said it over and over again, Raheem Morris's scheme is kind of a hybrid or combination of Dan Quinn's scheme and of Tony Dungy's scheme. Neither one of those schemes calls a lot of blitzes, and we'll see what wrinkles our new DC Jeff Ulbrich has for it. But the best thing you can do in that scheme is have horses that can get to the quarterback without calling blitzes. That's what makes that scheme most effective. And the Falcons are setting themselves up in a position to be able to do just that, Chris.
and depth again, and that's why I've been talking about at a certain point, and I've talked about this with other sports teams in Atlanta. The difference between one team and another is that the other team just has a few extra better players than you do. And at a certain point, that adds up. I'm looking at some of our linebackers at the moment. We have Troy Anderson, Caden Ellis, JD is still here.
Yeah, David
But
Bertrand. Yes.
again, we're still kind of thin there, and then with the injury part of it, who's reliable, who isn't, is bit us in the butt in the last couple of years as far as this. How many games can you play on the field? You can't contribute if you can't play, right? So with this, Falcon site is not even playing around. They're both on the website already. I just scrolled up. I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are already on there. This is pretty cool. So yeah, y'all heard it here live in living color in real time, and kind of shocking there. The Falcons announced a trade and trade up. And what picks were those again, Jordan? I think you mentioned them.
It was pick or what picks they gave up.
Yeah.
It was 46 overall. Let's see.
So that's the second round pick. So that's gone.
That's the second round pick, and I know there's the first next year involved as well. Let me look and see if I
So
can
that
find.
means we still have the 118th pick and I guess the 2 7th rounds.
I believe so. Let's see. Trade tracker.
They might as well go ahead and try to parlay the 218th and the 242 for I don't know, a sixth round or a fifth round. Could they pull that off? I don't know.
Maybe late fifth round, maybe sixth round. Certainly, it's a possibility. Especially if a team has a whole bunch of picks.
Pretty good, pretty good. Wow, that's pretty. Man, that's amazing. I'm shocked. I guess I'm just in shock because it's just not something you expect. And again, that's what I've been getting at in regards to the organization. This the franchise part of it is just that we got to even out things. It's been so many years now that the Falcons haven't even made the playoffs. We can't even scratch 500, much less above 500. When are you going to act like that's important, Atlanta Falcons franchise ownership? Mr. Blank, what are we going to do here? Because we can't keep letting this happen, right? So this is some definitely exciting times in Falcons history for sure. Definitely, excuse me, with Jalen Walker being that first UGA player who actually has talent, not just getting a UGA player for the sake of getting a UGA player, but somebody who actually fills a role, someone who actually can make some things happen now and not 17 years from now. We don't need that, right? So I'm excited about that. But now this is going to even be more exciting to see
Okay.
this out. Go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, I do have the details now. The Falcons gave up the second round pick, number 46. They gave up the 2026 first round pick, and they gave up a seventh round pick. I don't have of this year's draft, so I'm not sure whether it was 218 or 246, I think the other pick is, but they did give up one of those, and they got back the 26th pick, but they also got a third round pick back in this year's draft. So
Oh,
we actually um, are on the clock tomorrow, um, after all, because we didn't have a
wow.
third round pick. So not very bad at all
Um,
things considering, if Mr. Pierce works out as they expect him to. So, man, quite interesting.
I'm telling you, I am in shock. I don't even know what to say, man. Terry, I guess we're gonna start putting the meme back up there now. He's cooking, right? You gotta start using it again. Again, but that's why I was so forceful mentioning the beginning of the segment with what we haven't been doing for a long period of time. And I had to show the proof because there's people out there who want to say other stuff, but I'm like, second to last, second to last, last, second to last. We can't stop nobody. We lose games by a touchdown or less because we can't get that one stop when we need it. We can't get that one run stop, that one pass defense. One of the things about the edge rush, of course, it does help your cornerbacks. If that edge rusher is pressing and you can rush that pass or the pass it before he wants to, all of a sudden your cornerbacks have opportunities. Hey, guess what? Turnovers. What are we bad at? Getting turnovers. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
so. I'm really pleasantly surprised, but definitely encouraged. And I'm not sure where we're going with the third round pick, but I will hope somehow it's defensive related as well. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Right. Now,
at this point,
there's only one. There's one pick that I wouldn't be mad about in the third round on offense.
what's
If they
that?
were to get the center, I believe Jared is his first name, out of Georgia. Um,
I did see. Let's see. I want to
if
see.
he's still around, I don't know that he'll still be around. Wilson, I believe is his name.
We do need a center now, right? So that is an obvious need for sure. Who is our backup center though? Let's see if I can find that real
Well,
quick.
Ryan Newsel will be the guy who, yeah, Jared Wilson out of Georgia, 6'3", 210 pounds. If he's still somehow around, which I don't know that he will be, I wouldn't be upset with that offensive pick in the first round because we need some competition for Newsel. Um, who has taken over. And the Newsel did start 6 or 7 games last year, and he held up pretty well. But it's still, you always want to have depth and competition, and you don't want to be in a situation where your center goes down and you just don't have anybody competent
Yeah.
to play the position there. So I wouldn't be mad at that at all. If I could go back a little bit to Jalen Walker, because I kind of jumped the focus off of him when we saw that pick trade
Oh, that is
break
so
in
funny.
like that. Right. Jalen Walker is a hybrid front seven defender who lines up at linebacker and edge. He gets off the ball quickly and dips under blocks as a speed rusher off the edge. He has active hands, and he also wins with inside moves. Jalen Walker doesn't have the longest arms for an edge, but he tends to get his hands inside and get blockers' hands off of him. He tracks quarterbacks and closes well, adding on as a late pass rusher or delayed blitzer. Walker is a downhill run defender at inside linebacker and can stack tight ends and make plays in pursuit at edge. That's also from Steve Munich at ESPN. Mark Raymond says it's obvious in the pre-draft process that the Falcons had to address their defense and had to find ways to get to the quarterback. Walker will bring a speed element to Atlanta that it has been missing for a long time. With a pressure rate of 17% when rushing the quarterback, Walker has proved he's a speed rusher. He can also drop back as an off-ball linebacker. And work as a spy against mobile quarterbacks, which is something I was just going to bring up. He had Jalen Walker as his number 5 overall prospect in this draft. ESPN consensus board had Jalen Walker as their number 4 rated prospect in this draft, and we got him at 15. There again, if that holds up to be true, outstanding value when you're talking about where a guy was projected versus where you were able to get him at, and you didn't have to trade up to get him.
Well, here's the thing with that, just to interject. The fact that he did fall to that point, now I don't know why he fell, but for the fact that the Falcons went and actually still got him is the biggest thing. Because what if he had fell there and again we went away from that, right? That would have been the story of the night, and a whole bunch of season ticket holders probably would have just gave up at that point. So for the fact, again, this is progress, folks. He fell there, and he was actually there, rated higher than almost everybody else. And the Falcons said, "We got to get him," and then doubled down and said, "We're gonna get somebody else." I'm just again when you mentioned that, I'm still kind of just flabbergasted on that part of it.
Right, and the thing is, though, part of the fall could have been due more to just positional value and what teams were targeting in terms of positions. The fact that you started to see run on offensive linemen and some other positions, because when you factor it in, he was the 3rd edge rusher to come off the board. The only edge rushers that went ahead of him, was his teammate, Michael Williams, who's a bigger edge rusher, the more fits what the San Francisco 49ers do, which is where he went. And then Abdul Carter, who went 3rd overall. You know what I mean? So while he may have failed to 15, it's not like a whole bunch of edge rushers were picked in front of him. It's not like, teams were passing on him for other pass rushers. So I feel good about it. And like as that scouting report mentioned, and that was one of the things I was going to bring up on my own, the Falcons have had trouble with mobile quarterbacks for a long time, sir. Okay. We saw, and I think we probably hit the lowest of the lows with that when Josh Dobbs came off the bench for the Minnesota Vikings after we knocked out the starter who was replacing the injured Kirk Cousins last year. And this guy had just gotten there, didn't know the playbook, didn't even know his receiver's name, and they beat us. And a lot of that was due to his taking off and running against us. Jalen Walker is going to stop a lot of that. If he is put in place to spy on the quarterback, he has the speed to keep up with quarterbacks. He takes the angles. He has the intelligence and awareness to keep up with quarterbacks, to close out on them, and to punish them when he does get a chance to get a clean hit on them. So that's very big. The other thing mentioned in that scouting report was his ability to bend and dip around the edge. That is also a trait I always look for in pass rush, because if a guy is stiff, when he gets kind of tied up, he can't kind of dip down and escape. You know what I mean? But when he has the agility and the bend to do that, it's often a trait you see in some of the best pass rushers in the NFL, Chris.
So for everyone who's been watching, I see some people on and off, and those who will watch the rest of this weekend. What do you think about this first round of the Falcons draft? Is this one of the most exciting first rounds in Falcons draft history? I would have to say, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Because of the positions drafted. Like, there ain't no Tap McKinley out there. So
right.
This is big news, and again, going into addressing needs. We've needed this for such a long time, and now it's a matter of the pressure of it holding up on the field, obviously, and then everybody around them also stepping up. Because again, We can't have another season like last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that going all the way back to 2017. That has to stop, and this has to start now. Go ahead, Jordan.
I think Ruka Roro is going to be a big key to all of that because if he can provide pressure from the interior, it will help these guys see more single coverage. And so you be able to get, a meet me at the quarterback situation a lot more often. Now, I know some of y'all watching or who will watch and listen are saying, well, Jordan, you're a Georgia fan. You're just being all positive. You're not giving us anything else. So you ask, what are the concerns with Jalen Walker? There really aren't a whole lot of concerns. I mean, he's considered undersized for an edge, but as we know, he's going to be moved around. Um, if I guess because he's undersized, though, if a big offensive tackle is able to lock on him, and drive him forward, that could be a concern. And one of the other concerns would be maybe not as much play experience as some guys had coming out, and basically some people will be concerned when they look at the production, but I wouldn't be so concerned when I look at the production overall, because if you watch UGA, they rotate a lot of guys. They ask guys to do multiple things, not just line up and attack the quarterback for their own stat purposes. They want that team defense to be there. They want to be a disciplined defense. And I give you an example of that. Trayvon Walker was the number one overall pick in the draft with the Jacksonville Jaguars 3 years back. Okay, he only had 9.5 sacks his whole career at Georgia. He had 2.5 his freshman year, 1 sack his sophomore year, and 6 sacks as a junior. Okay, in the NFL, Trayvon Walker has 24 career sacks in 3 seasons in the NFL. In the last 2 seasons combined, he has 20.5 sacks in the last 2 seasons. So it's easy to see how Georgia defender can pace their production in the NFL compared to college. When you look at how Georgia plays defense, the fact that they rotate so many guys, and the fact that, I mean, to be frank, Georgia blows a lot of teams out. And so their guys are also sitting quite a bit of 4 quarters, when they're not locked into a big time SEC battle. So I wouldn't be concerned about that if I were you guys. I think we do have a player here. And so, like, what did I just say, Chris? 9.5 sacks for Walker in college? 9.5? 9.5 sacks for Walker, for Trayvon Walker in college. Jalen Walker had 12.5. So he actually produced more sacks than what the number one pick did. And 11.5 of those 12.5 sacks came over the past 2 seasons as well. He just didn't play a whole bunch as a freshman.
That's an understated point in regards to Georgia and them beating teams pretty badly most of the time. So snaps are not the same for Georgia players as they are for others because, one, they have so much talent on that side of the ball. So, the equivalent of someone having 4 sacks is as good as 10 for the most part, when you really look at it in the Georgia way. So everyone, I just wanted to say thank y'all for kind of joining
Right.
us.
One more quick note. I was very upset a couple years back when the Falcons passed on the Bookus Award winner, Nakobe Dean, who was the best linebacker in college football that year, and ended up going with Troy Anderson. And in fact, not only did they take Troy Anderson in front of him, they took D'Angelo Malone a few picks before he was picked as well. Well, Jalen Walker was the Bookus Award winner in college football last year. So that kind of rights a wrong. You did indeed take the guy who was considered the best linebacker in college football, who just happens to double as an edge in this case. Wow, man. What a night, Chris. What a night. We've actually gone over time, y'all, because this was supposed to be just a quick 30-minute, it's kind of instant reaction to the Jalen Walker pick. And here we are. We got breaking news and trades going down in the middle of Around the ATL. And that's why you should listen to Around the ATL, because you never know what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen.
So again, I appreciate those who will get a chance to watch this over the next few nights. And when we do our second show, basically our post show, we'll go over everything. Probably have some video too, just a little bit. We'll see if we can figure that in there. Because we don't know what's going to happen next. Again, third round will be. Is the third round tomorrow? Just to Third round tomorrow.
Second and third rounds tomorrow, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
we'll find out. We'll find out pretty readily what else the Falcons planning to do, and it's just exciting to see them actually make a move that makes sense to everybody. Is this again? We're going to try to win, and that's why I've always talked about with whatever franchise it is. At a certain point, it might not work, but you got to look at least try to win. You know what I'm saying? Put some pieces out there that actually are good pieces and see if it works. It might not work. Dame and Giannis over in Milwaukee, it doesn't look like it's working, but at least they tried because guess what? Dame is good and Giannis is good. You can't deny that. Together, maybe not as good. You got to find another piece then. Or
we'll take Giannis in Atlanta. We'll take
I was
Giannis in
going to
Atlanta.
say, maybe Giannis has to go somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? So, at the end of the day, the Falcons. This is one of their better drafts in a long time. Have it erased the complete offseason just yet? Kind of almost, yeah. I don't know.
Maybe. I do wish
I
Grady.
don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
I do wish Grady Jarrett was still here now, though, for sure. You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness!
He would finally have some help.
Right. Finally getting some help around him, man. You talking about all of a sudden going from like second to last to maybe fifth in sacks all of a sudden, right? That would have been awesome to see. But we'll see. We'll see what happens the rest of this draft and going to the rest of this off season, going into training camp, things of that nature. Hopefully, we can get some Falcons interviews on around the ATL in the near future. So, just as a reminder, make sure you subscribe to the IMTN Worldwide Radio page. It's scrolling right there at the page. You can also follow on Facebook and Instagram on IMTN Worldwide Radio. I'll post there again tonight. Twitter, IMTM Radio, and Jordan23 ATL on Twitter. Jordan, any last words, sir?
Just shout out to Falcons Twitter. Shout out to the Bulldogs Twitter. Finally the two intersect and are just about everybody's happy. And so I'm happy. Shout out to my mom who's still battling cancer. Been doing much better lately. So I'm so thankful for that. And last but not least, I want to thank God for this breath that I breathe to talk about these Atlanta, these Georgia sports that I love. Peace up. 8-time down, baby, as always. Go Falcons.
That being said, another episode of Around the ATL Down. This was the NFL Draft Show for 2025. We got the second half coming next week, so stay tuned for that. Till next time, y'all take care. And, man, what a draft, guys. Y'all take care.